Now here we're going to learn two different methods of finding the least common multiple or common denominator. For example, if you have to add 3/7 plus 1/14 plus 7/21, and the denominators are all different. That is, if we add unlike fractions, we need to come up with a common denominator, and that's where the LCM comes in. LCM is also called the LCD, which is the least common denominator when you're adding fractions. So what is the meaning of least, which means smallest, common multiple? So let's understand the meaning of multiple. So if I have, for example, 4, or let's say 6, you can write it as 3 times 2, 1 times 6. So 1, 2, 3, and 6 are called factors. When you break down the numbers, you get factors. These are called factors. Now what are multiples of 6? Multiples of 6, we have 6 times 1 is 6, which means you multiply 6. Multiples of 6. 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18, 6 times 4 is 24, and you can keep going on and on. So these are called multiples of 6. Multiply 6 with numbers to get multiples. So let's first write down multiples of 3. 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, 3 times 5 is 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, 36, 39, 42, 45, 48, 51, 54, 57, 60. Now let's list the multiples of 4. 4 times 1 is 4, 4 2s are 8, 4 3s are 12, 4 4s are 16, 4 5s are 20, 4 6s are 24, 4 7s are 28, 4 28, 4 8s are 32, 36, 40, 44, 48, 52, 56, 60, and we can keep going on and on. Now how about 10? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and then we can keep going on and on. So what we've done so far is listed multiples of 3. So let's look at just the 3 and the 4. Let's compare the multiples of 3 and 4. So we have 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, 12, and notice that 12 is a common multiple. And we can keep going on, and the next common multiple is 24. Let's keep going. And then we have 36. If we keep going, 48. And then of course 60. Out of all the common multiples of 3 and 4, the smallest or the least is 12. So then you say that the least common multiple of 3 and 4 is 12. So LCM of 3 and 4 is 12. Now let's look at 4 and 10. What is the common multiple? Let's use a different color. So if you look at 20, that is the smallest common multiple, but if you're looking for multiples, you can keep going on and on. But the least common multiple of 4 and 10, the LCM of 4 and 10 is 20. So for example, if I had to add 3/4 plus 7/10, then I'd be looking for a common denominator, which is the least common multiple of 4 and 10, which is 20. So this is what I'm going to do. I multiply the numerator with a 5 and the denominator with a 5, plus 7 multiply the numerator with a 2 and the denominator with a 2. And this is how we get a common denominator. We haven't changed anything. 5 over 5 is a 1, 2 over 2 is a 1. We have not changed the fractions. We have just written the fractions in a different way, so they can be written with a common denominator. And this is how we can add the two fractions and come up with the final answer. So that would be 29 over 20. So that's what a common denominator is used for. So let's look at these sets of multiples once again, 3, 4, and 10. And now we are looking, earlier we were looking at pairs of numbers. Now let's look at all three numbers and look for a common denominator. And here it has to be common to all three. So if you look at something, a multiple that's common to all three, notice that this is the only possibility. So the least common multiple of 3, 4, and 10, because now it has to be common to three numbers, not just a pair of numbers. It just gets larger in this case, so it is 60. So 60 is the LCM of 3, 4, and 10. Now notice that this method is tedious because we are listing the multiples and we don't know how long this list is going to be. If it was a pair of numbers, we found it quickly. If it's three numbers, it's a longer list. And sometimes it could even get longer. Sometimes the LCM of numbers is like 845. So you can imagine the number of numbers we have to write down before we identify the least common multiple. So this method of listing multiples is not very efficient when it comes to numbers that are large. So we're going to look at two different methods. So this was the first method. This is a crude method. It takes long if the numbers are large. Just notice how long finding the LCM of 3, 4, and 10 took, because we were considering three numbers, and that makes the LCM larger in this case. Our second method is called the prime factorization method. So we have the prime factorization method, and we also have another method which is called the division by primes method.